This is a tea time chat about why makeup technique matters more than the product. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. I've got a new tea time chat for you, yay! And a very out there makeup look. I just wanted to do something differently, a little bit more creative, and that sort of fits the theme of the video as well. So I've got a cup of Earl Grey tea from Clipper and my nice little cute sippy mug, I should say. Mok is Dutch, mug is English. And this video is actually instigated by some comments I got when I showcased the Longing palette by Blend Bunny in my recent palettes I wanted to go back to and use again. I feel that the Blend Bunny palettes are a really good example of the point I'm gonna try and make in this video, which is that if you know how to use your makeup, there are things you probably don't need in your life. And I'm gonna preface this video by saying I'm guilty of this as well. I use products and I like using certain products that you could also use other products for, where you don't have to go out and buy something if you know how to use other products in your makeup collection. So that's why I sort of wanted to come on here as a bit of a reminder to let you know, if you know how to use your makeup, if you know how to use different makeup techniques, brushes, different ways of applying things, you can make the products you already have stretch a lot further than you might actually think, and you probably don't need as many products as you think you do. So that's definitely why I wanted to do this video today, and my first point that I want to share with you of why knowing makeup techniques and trying to figure out what techniques work for you is better for you long-term than just buying more products is because it's cheaper. And I'm gonna make this point by holding up this. One of the things that I said, based on what a lot of people were saying, I love the Longing palette, I need these deep shades. I need there to be this kind of variety, else I can't blend my shadow. The point I'm trying to make with Blend Bunny palettes is that they are giving you a lot of product that you don't necessarily need within the same palette. If you have something that is like, maybe this light gray, or if this were like a matte and you have that already somewhere else in your collection, I really believe that if you have a light, two light shades, a cool and a warm, and two dark shades, again, a cool and a warm, whatever that is for your skin tone, you probably don't need half of this palette. And what Blend Bunny does, and this is really, really smart, is that they make it seem that you need all of these shades to create your makeup look. But you don't. It doesn't matter how deep you are, it doesn't matter what undertone you have. Back in the day when I first started using makeup and I first started watching YouTube, there were a lot of tutorials of MUAs and creators who were showing you that, for instance, to create this shade, you can use this, dab your brush into this, just go back and forth a couple of times, you'll end up with this. Because the undertones of those two shades match, and you can just take whatever is a very deep shade, same thing with these two, this is more of a brown tone, this is the dark green, dab into this, you get this. So that's what I was trying to tell you when I said, I don't need this many shades in the palette, and you don't either. Even if you have really deep skin and these really dark shades show up for you really well, you don't need that, because just by combining different shades in the palette that are already there, you can create these two shades. So this is a shade that could go, this is a shade that could go. If you have this shade that's super light, and you have this shade that's a little bit deeper, blending these two could potentially give you something like this. Same with these grays, yeah? If you have this, and you have a matte white, or maybe even this light purple, and you just blend these two together, you can play with shadow in that way, even if it's a powder. It doesn't have to be a cream that you pre-blend on the back of your hand. All you need to do with powder shadow is, especially if it's matte and it's the same texture, you can just do a bit of the light shade and whatever shade you want it to blend into next. And you can make, especially for instance this gray tone, You have grays in the palette. Could you do something with some of these shades and create this? The answer is yes. So it doesn't matter how light or dark or whatever it is you are, but that sort of level of creating your own thing is the thing that the Blend Bunny palette takes away from you. And that's the only point I'm trying to say, that I'm getting too many mattes in this. I don't need this many shades that have the same texture. It's about texture for me, yeah? Because it's sort of, again, it takes away that sort of level of creativity. Is this a beautiful palette? Does it work really well? And is it convenient? Yes, but this palette, and every palette that they do, and this goes for many different brands, I'll showcase it to you with some other brands I have as well. They make you think you need this many shades to create the looks, but you don't. And like I said, if you have like 2 light shades, a warm and a cool, and 2 deep shades, a warm and a cool, that work for you, then again, you wouldn't even need these things in the palette and these very light things. I know that there's Betty Bean, that's her name. She does this like thing where she says, I just want to take all the beige shades out because every single eyeshadow palette comes with a beige. I have this to show you, the Creme de la Creme from Glam Shop. I love this palette. 2 beiges. They did another palette called the Cashmere. Beiges. So beige is everywhere. It's in every single palette you buy, there will be a beige. It's like an epidemic. Do we need that much beige in our eyeshadow palettes? If you look at just this palette by itself, you're gonna go like, yes, that makes a lot of sense to have these 2 really light beigey shades in this entire eyeshadow palette. But you need to zoom out, and you need to look at everything else that you have in your makeup collection. And I'm just gonna say, I already own this by the same brand. And if I put them side by side, could this palette be smaller? And the answer would be yes. Because especially like, ooh, can I hold it like this? This shade, it's very similar to this. So did I need all of those shades in both of these palettes? In theory, the answer is no. And this is why I know I'm part of the problem, because I love both of these palettes. I really love them. But I really feel that this focus on products, especially in the makeup industry, is making us buy more, but without us like going like, oh, but I already have that shade in another palette, so maybe I should just mix and match it. And I'm part of the problem because I love eyeshadow palette and I always go like, ooh, that's a great color story. Yeah, sure. But very often you will already have a palette maybe elsewhere in your makeup collection that will allow you to create the same look. Which is why my comment with Blend Bunny is this palette didn't need to be this big. For no one. For not a single makeup artist or whatever it is that people were trying to say. Nobody needs this many shades in an eyeshadow palette. You just don't. Especially not if they're mattes. Because you can find really good mattes. And I'm not saying that the Blend Bunny mattes aren't good. They are really good. This is really lovely formula. But this palette could be half the size. Half the size. And you can still do exactly the same looks with this entire palette. If you just know how to like make use of blending all of the different shades together. And that is something that I feel we're losing. And the reason why we're losing it is marketing. It's because brands are trying to push product our way. And it's not just Blend Bunny, it's every brand. And like I said, I'm part of the problem. I'm very well aware because when it comes to eyeshadow palettes, I'm like a little bit of a magpie and everything goes, ooh, that's pretty. I don't have that yet. Could I realistically put like 5 or 6 of my eyeshadow palettes together and probably create the same looks? Yes, I could. It just doesn't make for good content because people want to see me use this palette. Because they want to know, is that palette good? And I know that there is a market, I think, for creators who do this, right? I think there are plenty of creators who do this whole thing like, oh, can I like dupe this with my singles, or can I like use other palettes together? And I really want to encourage you, especially if you're just a regular makeup user, you could say, at home, to always first look at the collection you already have. What do you have on offer before you buy another new eyeshadow palette? And for me, I get sent things in PR and buy a couple of things from time to time myself as well. And like I said, when it comes to eyeshadow palettes, that's my main vice. That's the the makeup category where I really like go to town, you could say. But you don't need it, especially if you have 10 eyeshadow palettes and you have something that's a little bit more neutral, and you have something that's a little bit more colorful, and you have something with like the special like shimmering shades. You could probably do 95% of the looks you see on social media. You do not need to go out and buy anything else. And that is something, like, I know I'm a creator here, I try a lot of eyeshadow, but know that I'm aware of this. Know that I know that most people in their day-to-day life will probably use their eyeshadow palettes in this way, where they pull like 2 or 3 palettes out of their collection and they do a look with that to see if they can recreate the look. That's definitely a thing that you can do. So I want to encourage you to do that, because it just means you have to buy a lot less. You don't need to buy the palettes I have in my makeup collection to do half the things I do. I'm pretty sure you don't. Another point I wanted to make in this video is that if you know how to use different makeup techniques, it can also make you more creative. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this look today is to sort of make that point. This is a very out there look for me. I used the Cheeryep Starcore palette that they did in collaboration with Freya, and I've been watching some of her TikToks, and she does these really beautiful eye looks, and I was like, I want to do some of the techniques that she does. So I've done a couple of things with my makeup today that I normally would not do, just to see how that might look on me. So I've done a really dark, like, actually there's already like 5 shades just in my crease alone. Normally I do 1 shade in the crease. A bit of a lazy makeup user. And then I've just like topped it with this like sparkling shade all over the lid to sort of like the light catches it better if I turn my head this way. But I've done a like brown, I think you can see it a little bit here in the middle. And then I've like blended it with a light blue, and I've done like a really dark grayish blue on the outer V that I've like blended into the brown. And then I've done a slightly lighter grayish blue in the inner corner. And that's why this looks so intense. But that's something that she does a lot. She does a lot of these dark shades in her, like, to almost like contour your eye socket. And I have a really deep eye socket, so I knew on me it would be intense. But I really like this. I'm gonna do this with lighter shades for sure. So that's where that darkness comes from. And then I've just used a lighter blue to sort of like blend it towards here. And then just that shimmer all over the lid. And then I used 2 different shades here. And then I've put that shimmer all around my eye socket. And I'm here for it. Another thing I see her do is that she uses an eyeshadow from the palette she's using on her lips and then topping it with a gloss in a contrasting color. Is this for me? No, but I love also trying out new things from time to time, and to just, especially now that I have a little bit more headspace. Like very often if I don't feel well, I just want makeup that makes me feel beautiful and pretty, and then I'm like, okay, and especially on the day-to-day, I just want to be able to do something quickly. But I'm really sort of like, from time to time, like every couple of months or so, I'm like, what would that do? So over the fall time, I had this with dark vampy lips. You've seen me wear so many darker lip shades in the past 3 months than I probably wore on my lips in the past 3 years, because I had completely forgotten about my deep vampy lip colors. And I was like, this looks really good on me. If I wear a very basic eye and then something really vampy on the lips, there's just something about it on me that works. And so now I'm like really into the vampy lip look. And I just know that like every single time I sort of like push it a little further. Another thing that I've been really loving again in the past couple of months, and I used to do this years ago, and I had kind of forgotten about it, but to put a shimmer, maybe the shimmer that I use in my inner corner for a highlight, to also like where that deep shade now is, to really like push it here and to almost like blend my crease shade with a bit of shimmer, and it adds so much brightness to my eye look, and I'm loving it. I've been doing this to just to go to work, you know? So these are things where I'm like, oh yeah, you know? So using your products in another way, and especially this is one of the reasons why whenever I review eyeshadow palettes, I want to make sure I use every single shade in the palette, because that pushes me out of my comfort zone. Would I have done this makeup look if I hadn't pushed myself to use every single shade in the Starcore? And in my brain, a lot of the Cheeryep palettes kind of split into different parts. They're like little like 4 pans, but you can also do like just in 2. So that's what I've decided to do for this look today. I focused on the deep, dark shades in the one half of the palette, and then tomorrow I'm gonna do an eye look with the lighter shades in the palette, just to see what happens, you know? And like this is 8 different eyeshadows on my face today. 8 in one eye look. I normally do like 4 or 5, maybe 6 if I'm pushing it. But 8 or 9, I normally don't do that. So that's another thing where I'm like, no, you need to try and use your makeup in different ways. And that's why I love like using every single shade in the palette when I review eyeshadow. But also when I do my makeup, like when I go back to them again a couple of months later, I'd love to see if I can come up with other looks. And that's one of the reasons, like if I truly love an eyeshadow palette, it's very often when I've used every single shade in the palette and there are still like 5 or 6 other looks that I've seen I could do with the palette that I just, you know, I just feel inspired by. But if I've done all the looks with all the shades in a palette and I don't see myself going beyond those 3 looks, then I just know that that eyeshadow palette isn't going to give me what I want long term. Because I'm just, like, I have too much makeup to begin with, so having these, like, what I like to think of then as one-trick ponies, I don't need too many of those in my makeup collection. It's why I don't have too many rainbow palettes, because you really only need like 1, maybe 2 rainbow palettes, one that's a little bit more pastel and maybe one that has like the more vibrant shades, and then you're good. Because once you have a rainbow palette, you have the vibrant shades. You don't need that many different things. And then again, like the point I was making earlier, if you do have other shades you could blend it with, you can tone down that red or that vibrant yellow, and you can you can make them look more pastel if you have a white, or like rainbow palettes can be a lot more versatile than you think, but that's why you really only need the one rainbow palette if you do really like a lot of color, and you don't need like loads of different variations. I used to have several rainbow palettes in my makeup collection. I've kept the ones that I liked, and I think I have like one that's like a true rainbow palette, and then there's another one that's a little bit more grungy. Both of them have been discontinued, so you could no longer buy it. And then I have a pastel rainbow palette. And that's about it, because if I want to do something with a rainbow palette, I know I have those colors right there, but I don't need it in any other sort of figuration. So that's why when it comes to like makeup, if you put other things together, I think you can make a lot more, you can really make your makeup go a lot further. And like I said, the reason why we get these many palettes and why we get these things is marketing. Brands are trying to sell you things. And I know that with, for instance, with Blend Bunny, a lot of people were saying like, yeah, but MUAs love them and drag queens love them. I'm like, yeah, but they have a collab with Alice Atlantis and they've had a collab with Robert Welsh. So of course they're gonna like it. You know what I mean? Not saying that these people aren't truthful. They are, and I really enjoy their content and the things that they do. But of course, they're gonna say they love that brand. And when it comes to something like this, again, like I said, I used to watch the MUAs of like 15, 20 years ago, and they would blend if they didn't have a shade in a palette, they would blend it themselves. Working makeup artists, if you watch content where people go through their kits of like people who go to like fashion shows or do bridal makeup or whatever, they need to have a lot of makeup to do a lot of different faces in one go, and they will have everything squashed into palettes. to make everything as small as possible. This is already too big. Like, it's slim, that it can work for an MUA, but for the most part, I really feel that, and this was also something that I noticed a lot when, like, eyeshadow palettes first became a trend, like, way, way, way back in the day, right? Before, like, Urban Decay Naked palettes. I remember there didn't really used to be eyeshadow palettes, right? We had singles, we had duos, trios, quads, maybe a quintet if you were pushing it. And I remember when eyeshadow palettes really became a consumer thing, like YouTube was filled with people raving about like the Too Faced palettes and the Urban Decay palettes, and Lisa Eldridge came onto her channels, making a video. I'm not sure if I could find it anymore, but she was like, no one who works as a makeup artist uses eyeshadow palettes because they're too big. You bring the 12 shades you need for the job, but then bringing an entire palette like this is just already, like, if you're not using every single shade of this palette on your job, you're not going to bring this palette. You're going to take out the shades you need, which is why I think Blend Bunny has now started doing like magnetic palettes, so makeup artists can take the shades out that they need. I definitely think that that's a thing as well. But that's why for such a long time, there was this focus, especially with eyeshadow, on singles. And like creating your own palette and then being able to customize things and being able to bring the like 5 shades you need for the job. So that's why I feel like we're almost losing that side of makeup because of how the makeup industry currently works. And I'm not saying, like, I'm not judging you for loving Blend Bunny. I love them too. I really love them. But with these like bigger palettes, I'm always like, that could probably be half. I could just use those shades with other things in my makeup collection. I don't need palettes this big. So that's one of the things that really goes into it for me. I sort of don't want to have to buy the palette, if that makes sense. I try to not be the queen of overconsumption. That's sort of what I'm trying to say here, is that I just want brands to also do different things. I really think that, like, I think like brands like Odin's Eye and stuff have been trying to make single shadows like happen almost. But I almost feel like nowadays, like, single shadows is something you buy if you're looking for like a very particular shade or like a multi-chrome. And if it's not this like super sparkly thing anymore, we're just not that interested in singles anymore, it seems. Whereas, like, I remember when I first started to buy makeup, I remember not buying any MAC palettes, even though they were around. MAC has had eyeshadow palettes for a very long time, because I had heard that MAC eyeshadow palettes weren't that great quality, and that the quality was with their singles. So when I first got into makeup, I started to focus on, very slowly but surely, I think it took me 5 years to build my own MAC eyeshadow palette. And I had all the classics, and the shades I ended up using the most I still have, and they still work, and like Wood Winged Patina, Satin Taupe, Wedge, like I can still name them off the top of my head because I just had them. I love them. But nowadays it's like you show an eyeshadow palette and people want that palette. And I really feel that that's something that has happened because of social media, because of people showing what they have. And that's one of the reasons why, even though I know a lot of people want to see that content of like making, like duping a palette with the singles in your collection, or like putting looks together with multiple palettes, because that's realistically what they can do at home, but it doesn't make for interesting content. Interesting content is if I can show you this palette and say, like, go out and buy this. And that has to do with algorithms, that has to do with how social media works. But I do feel we sort of lose that side of makeup. And to be quite fair, I build my single palette, like my singles collection, around my eyeshadow palette collection. It's why I haven't bought a lot of single shadows in years, because before multi-chromes ended up in palettes, I just bought a couple of Cleona shades. So then, of course, realistically, you might think, well, you have the Cleona shades. Could you not just do the look with the Cleona shades? But I end up with the same thing. I end up with the same thing as that I can do with like certain palettes that I have in my makeup collection, especially ever since indie brands started to insist on putting these like special shimmers into their palettes. I really feel like there's almost no need to be buying singles all the time. But you could very, like, if you want to keep it very curated, you could still buy singles. But here's the thing, compared to a palette, like buying all of these shades individually as a consumer, there's what, 20 shades in here? 20 shades. Buying 20 shades of eyeshadow that have this much product in, I think, yeah, this is a 26 gram palette. So that means there's 1.2 grams at least in every single pan, maybe a little bit more. Buying that yourself is going to cost you a lot more than the price of this palette, even if it's very matte heavy. An average eyeshadow consumer price, if you buy it as singles from brands, is going to set you back 13 to 15 euros for every single pan, per pan, no matter the texture, right? Because multi-chromes have gotten cheaper over time, so they're no longer as expensive to make. But yeah, just know that times 20, like 15 times 20 is a lot more than what you pay for this palette, which is why palettes for the consumer market became such a thing, because building out an eyeshadow palette with singles, like I said, it took me 5 years to build out my MAC singles collection, because already at the time a MAC eyeshadow was like 12.50 or 13 euros. We're talking 15 years ago, so they're more expensive now. So, and I wanted to then buy them as single pans because I knew I wanted to put them in a larger palette. So I bought one of the MAC palettes to put them in. And then I slowly but surely over time build out my MAC eyeshadow palette collection. So that's why I'm like, yeah, we've kind of lost that side of makeup where it was much more driven by MUAs and the way they do things if they go to jobs and like for fashion shows and stuff. Like that side of it is still there, but I really feel that because of social media, the makeup market for consumers has changed completely in the past 15 years. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I do feel that if we were to go back a little bit more to it, then, you know, you can very easily make things work. Another point I want to make in this video is how important it is that you use different brushes for different steps in your makeup routine, especially with eyeshadow. Investing in good brushes is going to make your makeup go so much further than what you see a lot of people. Like, it's not just for being able to create the looks that you see, it's to also make sure your makeup lasts longer and you make it go a long way. So brushes are incredibly important for playing with different things, like using a packing brush versus a fluffy brush to apply a certain shadow can make a huge difference in how things go on. Same thing with, for instance, a foundation. If you, like, I like light coverage foundations to begin with. So for me, it no longer makes a lot of sense to be using a beauty blender because a wet beauty blender takes away coverage. They're really good at making full coverage, heavier makeup look more natural on your skin because they take away a little bit of the coverage. But if your coverage is already very lightweight, you don't also need a beauty blender that just eats product. So that's why I like to use my fingers to apply to my face and then just blend it in with a brush to make it go on evenly. But again, that's a technique that I've taught myself because it just went so much better with the types of products that I use. So especially if, like me, you like very lightweight things that you're applying with a beauty blender, maybe try and see if you use a different techniques because you'll need less product. A beauty blender, because it eats coverage, a lot of people have a tendency to use more product because a beauty blender then takes it away. But with foundation, if you use different application techniques, maybe your foundation can take less time to use up over time because you are using less product if you use a different makeup technique as well. So another reason why it could be cheaper is if you use like makeup tools in a good way. You can make your makeup just stretch longer. You can get more out of it. Like, I love like to apply a bronzer with a very fluffy, what's it called again? Duo fiber brush. That's what I was talking about. I love applying bronzer with a duo fiber brush Duo fiber brushes are really, really fluffy, so they're only going to apply a very light layer of bronzer onto your face. It means, especially with powder bronzers, you need less product. You're going to pick up less product with the brush. You're going to deposit less product onto your face, which for me works because I don't need that much because I'm very fair skinned, right? So that's definitely something that goes into it. If you look into what brushes you're already using, like whether you're using a really big dense brush, it's going to pick up more product than when you're going to use something a little wispier and lighter weight. So that is also going to make your makeup just last longer. So experimenting with different brushes, different techniques, maybe using your fingers for a couple of things may actually mean that you need less product to begin with, and you can stretch your products for a longer period of time. So that's another reason why having good makeup technique can actually help you to get more use out of your product, and you need less product in the long run. There is a downside to all of this as well. It just takes effort. Trying to find out what works for you, like playing with things. There are no shortcuts. And I definitely feel, and I then come back to like what I was saying with the Blend Bunny palette, brands want you to feel, it's almost like this FOMO sort of idea, right? You're trying to like get the look that someone else is making with this palette, so you buy the palette. It takes a lot of effort to build out your own eyeshadow palette with singles. It takes a lot of effort to find the right brushes that work for you, to find the makeup techniques that work for you. You need to sit there and do your makeup in different ways and push yourself. And we're all busy people. We don't always have time for that. So that's one of the reasons why I do appreciate Blend Bunny, because this takes the thinking out of it for you. And that's one of the reasons why I think so many people like them, because you just get a row of 4 shades that always work together. I get it. I get why you'd like Blend Bunny. I like that you feel that having these 3 mattes in is just going to make your makeup look better. It does, because you no longer have to think about it. But I definitely also feel like, hey, if you love makeup, and especially with the way like things are going now, do you then necessarily need all these products? That's the point where I'm coming from. But yeah, then it does take effort, and time and effort is not something that we all have. And then it sometimes makes sense to buy the product and to sort of just have what you want in one go. But I definitely feel that, again, like I said, because of social media, because of like this whole thing with algorithms and stuff, makeup for the consumer market is more and more pushed into this vibe of you need the product, rather than looking at like techniques and things that you can use to make the products you already have work better for you. And I definitely feel that, and I'm trying really hard as a creator to stay away from that. But like I said, I'm not an MUA, so I cannot teach you new things. I can tell you where I found the tricks that I like to do. So that's why I'm currently like doing a series where I want to like teach you all my tricks and all my hacks and all the little things I do to do certain things. And I can tell you about the creators that I follow that give me that creative impulse, that make me go like, ooh, that's something I haven't tried in a while, or that's something I've never tried before. So I can tell you about that, and therefore hopefully help you find out what you want as well. So yeah, there's definitely something here, I think. Like I said, I don't have any ill wishes to anyone who does like Blend Bunny and says, I need those shades, but I do hope you realize that you're made to believe you need all of those shades. Because if brands achieve that you feel you need the product, they've done a good job. That's part of branding. That's part of marketing. That's how people sell you things. And I want you, like with my content, I really want to push you to go beyond that. It's not just about the new products on this channel. It's not just about me testing things out and then putting it in a cupboard to never show it to you again. I'm trying to be very mindful of these things, but that does mean I need to try things to be able to tell you about those things. So that's where a lot of the decisions for this channel come from. Know that I don't think that anything like less of you, but I do think if people come onto my channel and say, yeah, but Blend Bunny just, else I can't do it. You can, dear. You really, really can. But you need to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Step one. You perhaps need to just try things in a different way. And if you've never tried that, and that's why it's so easy for you to come to my channel if you've only just found me. But I've been doing this for a very long time, and I've tried a lot. And in a way, my entire journey of everything I've tried is on this channel. Back in 2018, I pretty much only did neutral makeup until 2018. And that's when I started watching, like, I think her name was Christy or Kirsty. I don't remember, but people were doing like cut creases and doing all these crazy things. And I was like, I want to be able to do that too. So I became more interested in colorful things. I found out what colors work best for me, but I also started to trial all of these different makeup techniques. Not all of them worked really well on me. I mean, I've definitely done looks where I was like, I'm not really sure that's what I was going for. But then I also found out that with my eye shape, I sometimes need to do slightly different things for it to show up or like look right on me. And I've just sort of, for the day-to-day, have managed to like create makeup looks in a way that works really well for me, that I can do really quickly. But that's a process that took me years. And I'm like, right now I feel like there's this like shift towards people who no longer want to do the work. And that's why I can sometimes then be a little bit like nasty and call people lazy, because that's like, there is no quick fix. There is nothing that will give you, like, there's just no instant gratification there. If you truly want to learn how you can make things like this work, if you have like half the shades. And nowadays there is no need to only have half the shades, because we have palettes like this, so that might make it really easy and go like, oh yeah, but I have all the shades I need. And I'm like, nah, you don't. You really, really don't. And especially with palettes like the Blend Bunny ones, and that's why I'm using this as an example, because I feel it's like the first thing that pops into my head when I'm like, but you don't need all of this. You really don't need all of these shades. Like, I can look again in this little corner. If you have this and you have this, you can create that. You didn't need this shade. So that's why I feel Blend Bunny palettes can just be a lot smaller than they could be, and then they could probably be cheaper. But I know why the brand does it, and I also understand why you love it so much. It wouldn't sell really well, because nobody does their makeup anymore like that. Nobody buys a palette and then wants to go through the effort of like putting things together. Like, my main gripe with eyeshadow palettes, if I don't like them, is if I can't find a good enough crease shade for me. That's usually like my main critique. But yeah, you know, like if we look at like recent things that have been on the market, we get things that are incredibly similar to one another. Makeup by Mario, Ethereal Eyes, beautiful palette. But if you already owned the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude, you probably didn't need both, like I do. Ooh, I'm sticking my finger into a shade. No. Again, from a reviewer's perspective, it makes sense that I have both of these. But if you're like doubting between like, of course this one was discontinued, but this one you can still buy, like, you probably didn't need both. And someone also came onto my comment saying, yeah, I had that with the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude, everything looked the same. The reason why I like this better than the Blend Bunny is texture. This doesn't give me like a million mattes. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mattes. That's it. There's 8 shimmers in this, and all those shimmers, different levels of shimmer. This one and this one, color-wise, very similar. Different load of shimmer. This is more of a satin. This has more obvious glitter in, so it's going to give a different effect. Same thing with this. This is a little bit lighter, but that's more of like a metallic. So to me, having these different shades in works in my brain, because texture with powders, it's very difficult to blend that when you're doing an eyeshadow. But mattes and creating different colors out of different mattes, you can very easily do by just going boop boop in one shade and boop boop in the other, and you can mix and match them really, really easily. But texture, I feel, That's something I've not, maybe I'm just not that creative. Maybe I'm just a little crazy there, but that's why this palette makes more sense to me than the Blend Bunny. And it's 5 shades less than what you have in the Blend Bunny to begin with, but I feel sometimes I can do more with this because of the layout, like I can like go into more of a warm tone direction. I can make it look more cool toned. I can go even a touch rosy with this, and I'm like, but with the Blend Bunny, I always feel a little boxed in because of how it's laid out. I mean, this is a little bit more warm leaning, and then this is all pretty gray, blue, green, and then it's gray and purple, but I would not necessarily be like pushed by this palette to mix and match these. Can you do a look with purple and green? Perfectly. They are opposites on the color spectrum. You can very easily make that work. Would I do it with this palette? No, because this palette is making you think of it in boxes, which again, very helpful. And I've appreciated loads of other palettes in the past for doing that. But then I've always, like whenever, like something like the Tartelette in Bloom that I selected for my makeup, like going back to this month, it also has 3 rows. It's got a cool tone row, a more warm tone row, and then a more neutral row. It also has 3 deep shades. It's got a light shade in every single row. But with that palette, because of how small it is, it's only 12 shades, I do, if I want to get more different looks out of the palette, I do push myself to use different things in the different row. I can, if I want to, do the cool tone look, do the warm tone look, do the neutral look. But because of how curated it is, if I want to get more use out of the palette, I have to start mixing and matching. With this, if I use 8 shades and I want it to look a little bit more green warm, I just use these 8 shades. I don't go here. Or, because of how it's laid out, that's already 6 makeup looks. That's a lot. And I just know that realistically, most people, when they already see those 6 looks laid out, that's what they stick to. They will never like be enticed to like mix and match things. And that's another point what I was making with like being more creative with your palettes. The Blend Bunny, even though it's used by a lot of creative people, there's a difference here. It's used by creative people, so therefore people think that if they buy that product, they're going to be as creative. And the point I'm trying to make is the Blend Bunny is pushing you exactly in the opposite direction. If you're not already really good at makeup, like an Ellis Atlantis or a Robert Welsh, you're not going to get the use out of this palette the way you think you're going to. And that's the thing I want to try and protect you against, you could say. But like I said, I am very much guilty of doing the same thing. Case in point, this is a brand I love, Viseart. I've never personally done this, but I have seen creators who've done this in the past, where they've deputted some or sometimes all of their Viseart palettes into other palettes. The amount of overlap between different Viseart palettes is insane. The amount of creamy beiges in Viseart palettes, it all looks the same. And I decided to put like all of the things that are like violet lila sort of things, right? And these are just the 12 pans. So here's the lilas. You can already see 2 like creamy beiges in here. Let's count them together. This is the Violette Étendue, which has these bright colors that sort of distract you. But again, creamy beige, number three. Violette Vespertine. I feel this is the worst offender. Like, you get 3 that essentially are, like, these 2 are the worst, but yeah. I feel like this can count for 3 of, like, creamy beiges with a slightly different undertone. That's already 6 in just 3 palettes, right? And then I have the Violette Nocturne. This is the newest one that I got in. And here again, you can see creamy beige. And we even get a white, but that does have a white, like, that does have a shift, so another 2. That's 8 palettes, or 8 creamy beigey shades, across just 4 palettes. And this is one of the reasons why, like, I love Viseart formula, and whenever they do color stories, I know that they have, like, Like within the palette, they have a little bit of cool, they have a little bit of warm, they have a little bit of neutral in there, often a little bit of a pinky rose vibe as well. It's why I love them, because Viseart palettes can mix and match in so many different ways. But I have like 10 of these. And I'm like, that means I probably have between those 10 palettes, like what, 25 creamy beiges? Just in my 12 pans? And then we're not talking about the little Etoile palette I have, the little quads that I have. I haven't even counted those. And that's just Viseart. And I'm like, this is why I don't need any more Viseart eyeshadow palettes in my life. But they keep coming out with different color stories, and I'm like, oh, I want to try them for the channel. I want to try and see if, you know, tell people whether this might be right for them if they've never tried Viseart, and therefore I keep buying them because I know I love their formula. And I also love their older palettes. I think I'm gonna have to do like a Viseart only like palettes I go back to in March or something like that, because I love my Viseart palettes, I really, really do. But I need to get some more use out of them really, really soon, because for how much I love them, I don't often go back to them again. Especially because then they have like new things out, and then I buy the new stuff, and then I focus on that again. So that's definitely part of the cycle. But yeah, Viseart is also one of the main offenders of like putting shades in that between palettes are just so similar. Within the palette, within the cosmos of this palette, I feel this color story makes so much sense, but I can see shades in here where I'm like, that could be in the Kashmiri. Oh, that shade is probably, you know. So I can see the overlap really well as well. Like, this is what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm also owning up to you guys, right? Where I'm like, yeah, I'm also part of the problem. I'm one of the worst offenders here as well, but I don't want you to fall into that trap. You don't need the same things I have in my makeup collection. Like I said, for me, some things make sense to have because of reviews. I also get sometimes sent things in PR. That doesn't mean I don't like them. That doesn't mean that you don't have to like them. But I do feel that we can all like try to come together and like do things in a certain way. And especially if you're at home, I do not want you to think you need as much as I do. I just don't want you to feel that way. And to see people go like, yeah, but Blend Bunny, they are so good because they have all the shades in. No, they don't have all the shades in. You don't need that many shades in an eyeshadow palette. If we could do eyeshadow like 15 years ago and do super creative looks with just 5 shades, you don't need 20 shades in a palette. It's one of the reasons actually why those big Morphe 32O palettes, when they were all the rage, I tried to stay away from. I only, for a hot minute, had an 88 palette back when those coastal scents things were really trending. I had an 88 pan palette, but they were like this tiny. And I had one of the rainbow, like 120 shades, but that was really, really early on in my makeup days. And as I started to know more about makeup and I started to look more into formulas, I have found for myself that an eyeshadow palette ideally has 9 to 12 shades. Maybe 15 at a push. But once it gets bigger than that, I always feel there are shades in there. I'm like, what do I do with you? So that's one of the reasons, that's where my comments with Blend Bunny come from. Like, I really feel that the Longing palette could easily have had 1 row fewer of shadows. Like, if that palette had been 15 shades, or is it 24? It's 24 palettes even, or 24 pans even. I really feel that like with 8 fewer pans, you could still create very realistically very similar looks with that palette, and then the palette could have been cheaper. You know, you don't need all of these shades in these palettes very often. And with Blend Bunny, I'm always like, so many mattes, why? Because I don't necessarily need them. Like, if you then give me 24 shades, give me at least 8 shimmers, please. That's not even half of the palette, right? Like 12 would be half the palette. And I always just want there to be more texture. I find texture is a thing, also with clothing, texture is a thing that creates interest, not color, not like light versus dark. That never creates the interest in a makeup look. Texture does. texture does. Whether there's shimmers, whether there's mattes contrasting with shimmers. And sure, mattes can be really, really beautiful, and they can really be helpful in how your makeup comes together and how you sort of make that work if you have very hooded eyes or your lids are very textured and you're afraid of fallout. There's merit in mattes. I'm not gonna lie, there is a lot of merit in mattes. But you don't need every single shade of the sun in a matte in a slightly different color. You don't. You can blend that together, usually within the same palette. And that's one of the reasons why I'm like, what are we losing here? What are we not doing? And I know that a lot of people who've come to the beauty community like around this time, when it's always about the products, that they lament like not having been there for when makeup content was different, and especially for the people who were around when makeup content was different, they often want those things again. But you can still do that at home. You don't need content creators to tell you what to do. Like, let me just put that out. You do not need to, you don't need me to tell you what to buy. You do not need me to show you how to play with your makeup if you don't play with your makeup. You need to start doing that yourself. If you have singles, build your own BYOP. Of course, it's fun that we can like do it together, but that's the thing. Very often what people then want is that either they want to have the same products or they want the creator they're watching to have the same products. But especially my singles collection, there's brands in there that have gone defunct. Shades you can no longer buy. So I'm like, yeah, I cannot realistically like make that interesting as far as like a content perspective, especially not for long form. For short form, I can see merit in like doing BYOP and doing all that, but for long form content, it's no longer, it's not being pushed. People aren't watching it, even from my subscribers, because that's how the algorithm works, right? First, you guys who watch all my videos regularly and you're subscribed need to watch something, and that's when YouTube starts to push it outwards. If there's only 5 of you interested in single shadows, it's not gonna happen, because I need to get a certain amount of views compared to the amount of subscribers I have in order for my channel to not like tank completely. So there are certain things I just can't do, even if you say you want to. It's not gonna work, I'm afraid. So I think I'm gonna leave it there. I felt I got a little rambly there towards the end. I had points prepared and then I sort of went off script. So I do hope I still made sense towards the end of the video. But know that I mean you no ill will if you do enjoy Blend Bunny. Like, there's a reason why I have a couple of their palettes. I enjoy them too. They're really good quality makeup. I love them for that reason. But I also feel there's a but. There is a bit of a but. And like I said, I'm part of the problem. I'm definitely part of the problem. I know that I'm very well aware that I have other things in my collection where like that's not really making a lot of sense. So, and I think the Viseart part of my collection is like the main offender there. But that is something that in recent years I've stopped trying to there are certain color stories I love, and I've stopped buying things if I already know I have something like it. I know like a couple of years ago, and some people have asked me to bring that series back, which is a series where I did like a comparison of 4 palettes that had a similar color story. And a lot of people enjoyed watching that. It was like a battle palette kind of thing, palette battle I think I called it, and I gave them points, and I would like, but here's the thing, that's one of the things I've decluttered a lot, is if things were too similar to other things, I've gotten rid of it. And one of the questions I ask myself if I bring new palettes into my collection is this any different from anything I already have? And if the answer is no, then I try to make other choices. Then I'm skipping things by now. And of course, I've tried a lot, I have a lot. So there is going to be some overlap, of course, but I try to be very careful to make sure that I just don't have too much overlap into things, because, I mean, who remembers the like warm tone with a pop of blue craze that we had a couple of years ago? I think I had 10 of those eyeshadow palettes in my collection at some point at the same time. So I know that it's not realistically then something I'm going to reach for, because I'm always going to reach for my favorite. And as new things come out that I want to test out, I do end up with a little bit more. Like in a certain category, I'm currently obsessed with these like darker, smokier, vampier things, and lipstick wise, but also eyeshadow wise. And I really want to try and see if I can make red eyeshadow work for myself this year. But I know that in the end, I'm probably going to end up with the one thing I loved most, and then the rest is probably going to be passed on to other people in the next couple of months. So yeah, know that I'm very aware that I'm just as guilty of it as you are. But I do feel that with a brand like Blend Bunny, I'm like, oh, I always wish those palettes could be like so much smaller. And I really feel that they could be. And I really feel that if we as makeup consumers would be like more demanding of brands, that we would get those things as well, you know? I really feel that that's something that we've done together as a community, and there's nothing that I really feel I can do as a single person, but it is still how I feel. I'm like, it's such a shame that nobody realizes that you can just like use your shadows in a different way. And if you have a couple of singles that can go with every single palette, then we wouldn't need all of those creamy beiges in all of our eyeshadow palettes. We just don't. And again, all those Viseart palettes I held up, those could be smaller too then, you know? It's like, it's just the way it goes. You don't need every single version of a beige under the sun just so you can do a makeup look. You just don't. You really don't. So thanks so much for watching me here today. Thumbs up this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more by me. I make videos 4 times a week on this channel, and I will be back with a new video really, really soon. In the meantime, you can also check out my second channel, which is called Floating in Books. The link is in the description box down below, and I post there once a week about like lifestyle-y things and like books, travel, whatever it is that I've got going on at that moment. That channel is a little bit more off the cuff than this one is. A little less planning, you could say. I just post videos there about things that I enjoy at the moment, you could say. And then there's Instagram and TikTok. So you can follow me wherever, and then I hope to see you again really, really soon in a new video. Bye-bye.